Okay guys, so since I'm not there today, I thought I would make a little tutorial based off of the assignment that I left. So hopefully if you have any questions, it'll kind of clear some of that up for you. Alrighty, so starting with number 1, Ima Hurrian approaches a stoplight in her car, which is moving with a velocity of 10 meters per second. The light turns yellow, Ima applies the brakes and skids to a stop to avoid hitting some trick-or-treaters. If Ima's acceleration is negative 2 meters per second squared, determine the displacement of the car during the skidding process. Okay, so my next step here is to say, well, what am I given? So I'm going to go through the equation and actually underline all of the numbers that I see. So Ima Hurrian approaches a stoplight in her car, which is moving with a velocity of, all right, I've got 10 meters per second. So I'm going to go ahead and underline that. The light turns yellow, Ima applies the brakes and skids to a stop. If Ima's acceleration is negative 2 meters per second squared, underline that, determine the displacement. So I have a velocity of 10 meters per second. And I know that the acceleration is negative 2 meters per second squared. Now I know 10 is meters velocity because 1, it has the unit meter per second, which is how we measure velocity, and 2, it also says velocity of. Additionally, acceleration, I know that it's acceleration because it says meters per second squared, which is how acceleration is measured. And also it says the acceleration is. Now, there's another thing that was given to us in this problem, but it's not a number. You actually have to read it and kind of figure it out. And that is that it skids to a stop. If I'm stopped, my velocity is 0. So over here, I'm going to write V equals 0 meters per second. So now I have 2 velocities. That means one has to be my initial and one has to be my final. And the way you figure out which is you have to use the context clues within the problem. So Ima was driving her car with a velocity of 10 meters per second. Then she slammed on her brakes until she came to a stop. So that tells us then that VO has to be 10 because that was happening at the beginning or initially. And then we have VF is 0 because that's what was at the end or the final velocity. So now we have all of our givens. Now we need to determine what is the unknown. So it says to determine the displacement. So we are going to try to find the displacement. Now, I gave you 3 kinematics equations yesterday. The only one that has VF, VO, A, and D is VF squared is equal to VO squared plus 2AD. Now, once you've identified an equation, all you need to do is plug in the numbers for the letters. So VF here is 0, so I'm going to write 0 squared is equal to VO, which is 10, so 10 squared, plus 2 times A, which is negative 2, it's a negative, there you go, times the displacement. So now we can go ahead and do some math. So 0 squared is 0, 10 squared is 100, and here 2 times a negative 2 ends up being negative 4 times the displacement. Now here's where some of y'all are going to mess up. And it's okay, but you got to make sure you watch out for this. So a lot of us want to go and say, well, 10 plus a negative 4 is 96, right? Because, not 10, I'm sorry, 100. Because 100 minus 4 is 96. However, I can't add these together until I've multiplied 4 times the displacement. So what I'm going to do instead is try to get the displacement by itself. So if this is a positive 100, the opposite of positive is a negative. So I'm going to subtract 100, and whatever I do on one side, I got to do on the other side. So that cancels, and now I've got negative 100 is equal to, and over here we have -4 times the displacement. So if I'm multiplying, the opposite of multiplication is division. So I divide by -4 on both sides. And then what I'm left with is a displacement of -100 divided by -4, which gives me a displacement of 25 meters. You got to make sure that you put the unit, otherwise I'm not going to give you full credit. I'm going to take some points off. So, step 1, identify what the problem gives you. Step 2, find the unknown or what the problem is asking for. Step 3, pick out the equation that goes with the variables that you made a list of. I don't know what step we're on, but the next step is to substitute the numbers in for the letters, and then the last step is to go ahead and solve. So let's go ahead and look at problem 2. So Ben Russian is waiting at a stoplight for his car, in his car for a group of zombies to walk by. When the light turns green, Ben accelerates from rest at a rate of 2.5 meters per second squared for an interval of 4 seconds so that he can flatten those walkers. Determine the displacement of Ben's car during this time period. All right, so I like to read the problem once just to kind of figure out what's going on, and then I go through and start underlining what I need. So I noticed that, here we go, he accelerated at a rate of 2.5 meters per second squared. I know that this is an acceleration because its units are meters per second squared. You need to realize anytime you see meters per second squared, that is automatically an acceleration. And he had that acceleration for 4 seconds. I know that that's time because time is measured in seconds. So 4 seconds. There you go. That's 4 and an S, not 4 or 5. That confused me earlier. There's one more thing that the problem tells us, but it's not a number, and that is that the word rest. When you see the word rest, that tells you that the velocity is 0. Then I'm going to write that down here, and we've got to use context clues to figure out, is that an initial velocity or a final velocity? Well, the word from here, the word from tells me that that's where he started. You came from rest. You came from your house. That was where you begin. That was your initial quantity. And that's why this is going to be VO. So now I need to figure out, what is the unknown? What is this problem asking me to find? Well, it's asking me to determine the displacement. So I'm trying to find displacement. So if we look back on the equations that I gave you yesterday, so look back at your notes. The only equation that has D, VO, A, and T is D is equal to VO times T plus 1/2 AT squared. So the displacement is going to be equal to 0 times 4 plus 1/2 times A, which is 2.5, times 4 squared. Now, if you're putting this all in your calculator at once, you got to make sure that you put the parentheses, otherwise it's just going to screw up your answer. So when we work this out, 0 times 4 is 0, plus, and 1/2 times 2.5 times 4 squared actually equals to 20. So D is equal to 0 plus 20. So D then is equal to 20 meters. And we got to put the units. Okay, so other than that, just remember, make a list, find your givens, find your unknown, use that list to pick an equation, and from that point on, you just have to substitute and solve. If you have any questions, you can always message me on Remind, but I hope this helped.